Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Jaira. We're just going to do a few admin things. First of all, just give you a brief chance to see who's actually talking to you. And we got more people arriving. Oh, right, Jaira's onto it. I'm going to stop sharing that slide there. And we're going to go over to camera. And you should have by now a little picture of me somewhere anyway on your screen. We can't keep it on for the whole time because unfortunately there seems to be a problem with bandwidth for some people, and therefore we're trying to keep the bandwidth as low as possible for all the delegates, and so they get a good session. Right, today we have quite a large number of people and many more joining us as we go along. So apologies if you get a repeat of the welcome from time to time, but that's going to be necessary for the new people joining us. You need for this meeting the resources, and those are on the resources tab, as Jaira mentioned. Or if you can't get them from there, you'll look in chat, you'll see that there is a link in chat, which is on the screen there now as well. One or the other. The basic thing you need for today is the delegate booklet. But can I please request that you are honest about this, because at the back of the delegate booklet are all the answers. So if you get the maximum from this, please don't be tempted just to go and look at the answers and that's it. Please try to do the 3 tasks we're going to give you to do without looking at the back of the booklet, and then you've always got them in the back of the booklet afterwards, so you can go back and see what the answers would have been. That's there. Now, the second thing I'd like to do today is just request that into chat, partly to see you all okay and working with it, could you put in your country, where you're coming from, whether you are delivering or hoping to deliver this qualification, and which programming language you want to do. So the chat window for me would be like UK, delivering, and then the language I want to use for the exam. So if you could do that by putting that into chat now, please. I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that, and then we'll get underway. If there's any other problems, now's the time to put them into chat. Myself will handle any questions about the actual materials, and Jaira will help you with any technical issues you might be having. Okay, so where you're from, whether you're delivering, and what language you want to do. Thank you, people. Just waiting for a couple more people to put stuff in chat. Thank you, Marvel. Okay, well, let that keep rolling. I think I have enough of an idea now from the answers I've got from people, but I would love to hear where you're from. I'm going to look back across all those later as we go along and see. So thank you very much for doing that, folks. I'm assuming everyone now has been able to download the materials as required. You will notice in amongst those materials, one of them is for Module 2. That's for the Wednesday session. And I will mention more about that. There's not a mistake. It is intentionally there today. And I'll explain why later on when we prepare for Wednesday. Okay. Keep them coming in chat, folks, if you haven't yet put in where you're from, whether you're delivering or hoping to deliver, and what language you might be using, although I think we have a pretty good idea now. Right, I'm going to switch over. I'm going to disappear from view, so that was your brief chance to say hi to me. And we're going to share the screen. Okay, hopefully everyone's got that. Right, a couple of things to say at the start. One is, and I did this last week when I was doing the ICT training, I forgot to switch my microphone on after we had a break. So if you notice things happening on screen and no sound, please put in the chat that you can't hear me. Hopefully I won't do it again today. And the second thing is that if for some reason, it's never happened yet, but for some reason the internet connection goes down my end, please stay online and we will endeavour to reconnect. And if after 5 minutes not, log out and log back in again after waiting a few minutes and we will resume. So hopefully that won't happen. But if it did, please don't think things have happened and that's the end of it. You can still log in and we'll be busy behind the scenes getting back online and getting ready to continue the meeting. Right. Okay. Good morning. Welcome. Well, fantastic turnout. There's currently 47. Well, no, there's 45 of you, which is very impressive. Thank you. I'm pleased you're interested. And I noticed that quite a few of you are already delivering. And I notice also so far almost exclusively people are using Python as the language. So that's going to obviously affect how we're going to deliver this training today. Okay, the main aim today is to look at all the sort of background materials and the technical issues and how we get it all sorted and how we actually get the exams underway, how we deliver it and so on. And then on Wednesday, same time, we're going to look at how to mark it. Okay, so I'm sure you'll all be very pleased about that one. You have a chance to try some marking yourself, look at how we mark it and so on. That's our objectives over the 2 sessions. In this session today, I'll just introduce myself. My name is, as you haven't twigged yet, Malcolm Holmes. I'm a senior examiner with Pearson's. And that basically means I have a role of a mixed role. Sometimes it involves writing a paper, but not for this qualification. Sometimes it involves checking other people's writing of papers. It can involve discussions about materials and how the various things are developed. And then each exam session, I lead a team of examiners who then marking the papers that we're talking about today. Okay, so I will be sharing with you some of the insights we had from this summer's exam season. If you are looking for support and help, I should point out that now there are quite a few exams have gone on, so you have quite a back catalogue of exam materials for you to look at and refer to, and we'll talk more about that later. Just to qualify point though, whilst I'm a senior examiner, I have no connection at all with the publications section of Pearson, and I'm not in a position to answer any questions about textbooks or materials in that area. That's from the publications. But at the end of this training session, I will give you a link to someone who knows who to ask about those things. So that will come up. Today we're going to confine ourselves basically to the specification and its delivery and understanding how we deliver it and the associated practical issues around the second paper 2 and running that qualification. All right, please pop into chat anything you want to ask as we go along, but bear in mind I won't check the chat until we take a pause. So I'm not putting anything in, don't put anything to meeting chat until we have a pause. Write down your question if you want, and then when we have a pause to do one of the activities, fire off your question and I can look at them while you're doing the activity. There is only just me and Jaira. There's just the 2 of us running this. So do bear with us if sometimes there's the odd pause while we're trying to sort out an issue or problem or get our heads around things. Okay, I think we can move on. We've basically mentioned this. We are going to look at the content of the qualification, to explore and plan the course and lessons, assessment and support. And then on Wednesday, we're going to look at actual assessment of the questions, marking the questions. So, welcome to Pearson. This is Pearson Edexcel. You may know it as Edexcel, or you may have been, if you're more recently with us, just as Pearson. We have been working in combination. The Pearson company took over the examination board called Edexcel many years back now. We are one of the leading exam board in the UK, and globally we have exams going on all over the place. And obviously you're today joining us as part of the International GCSE grouping. I should point out, by the way, that there's nothing stopping you or whatever looking at the domestic GCSE, which is very similar, computer science GCSE, and so that, you know, if you want even more materials, then don't forget that the domestic GCSE is available to you. There is a slight difference in subject content, but that's mapped for you on the website if you want it, so you can be confident that you're still covering the same curriculum. Here we go. Let's look at this. Probably know this, or hopefully you know this, but it's important we do go over it because there's some important things to say here. Looking at the central image there, the central box, we have the assessment objectives. And I think it's very, very important to understand that the idea that an exam is recall is very much an old idea. AO1 is still the recall element of the exam. It's demonstrate knowledge and understanding of the key principles of computer science. That's straightforward enough. But what really matters, and what is much more significant, is the fact that we are talking about application in AO2 and analysis in AO3. And so one of the first things that we need to think about is who will be best suited, what pupils, what students will be best suited to this qualification. Okay, and that is basically those who can not just show knowledge, fine, that's great, but can they apply it, and sometimes apply that knowledge under exam conditions, and can they analyze a problem, can they work it out? So you are looking for a particular type of student here when you are recruiting for this course. You do need a student who can actually get into the problem, and it's quite important to realize it's not necessarily the brightest pupils that you need to recruit, it's the most capable students that you need to do. They may not be the brightest, but they're the ones that are good at taking what they do know and doing something with it. And if you're wondering about performance, and obviously as the two exam papers go on, they're looking more and more at how the candidate does that application of knowledge, where they put it and use it, and how they analyze the problems, which is especially, of course, paper 2. Okay, so we have these 3 assessment objectives. Okay, we then have, going to the right, this structure. It's 100% external assessment through 2 papers, each of which is worth 50% of the final marks, and which are graded on the 9-to-1 grading scale for GCSE. So in that circumstance, we are going to look later on about how these 2 papers work. The first one is a traditional written examination called Principles of Computer Science, and of course the second one, the practical paper, application, will take a bit more time to look at because there's quite a few issues around that and getting it right and making sure it works really well. Okay, now moving to the left-hand box, we have the content, the 6 content areas, which we're going to look at briefly now. Right, so first of all, how does the assessment objectives break down? Well, for paper 1, there is obviously, this is the, if you like, the knowledge understanding paper with some, sort of application. Whereas paper 2, as you can see from that breakdown, is very much the application and analysis paper. So you can see that AO1 has very little significance for paper 2, but there is some elements to it. And AO3 has very little significance for paper 1. All right, so I think I said that correctly. AO1 has little on paper 2, there's some, and AO3 has little on paper 1, but there is some. And you can see then that the lion's share, nearly half of the marks, are for right, application of knowledge in various ways. There are two topics which really relate to paper 2. That's topic 1 and topic 2. And I like the fact that topic 1 says at the start problem solving, because I think this also reflects the sort of students you're expecting to try and get for your course. You want students who like to get engaged, who like to have an idea that there isn't necessarily an answer, but there is many answers to the problem, and their answer, their solution can be just as right as anyone else's. And if it does the job, it might do it slightly different to their neighbor, but they've solved the problem using coding, and they're going to get there. We look at this in one of 4 ways, basically. We can just say sometimes, just occasionally, they might be able to solve a problem in nothing more than words, or we might present them with a solution in words and ask them to convert it to a flowchart, pseudocode, or your chosen program language, which is probably going to be Python. It doesn't have to be. We have C# and we have Java, but almost everyone now, around about 95% of candidates are using Python. I should point out this point, and please only ever use one programming language. It hasn't happened very often, but we have occasionally had students who are flipping between 2 of the programming languages, which is a nightmare for marking purposes. So therefore, please stick with your one chosen language. Now, as well as expressing a problem in words, we might use flowcharts. We might provide you with a flowchart and ask you to convert that into something else, or we might give you a problem and ask you to create a flowchart. We also make use of pseudocode as specified in the appendix in the specification. So the actual pseudocode is there for your use, and the candidates have a copy of that during the exam. And we have program code. And then in this topic 1 problem solving, we expect candidates to analyze a problem, design a solution, break it into smaller sub-problems, maybe abstract something from the real world, or alternatively create abstractions themselves. And those are all different approaches. Now, if you think about this, is all very high-level stuff. Okay, it's topic 1, and immediately we seem to have an awful lot of heavy going on here. And so I should emphasize that this is very much the high-end skills part of the curriculum. And so, pseudocode, just a couple of examples there of its use. And we have found over the years, initially a lot of confusion between pseudocode and language, but nowadays candidates are very good at keeping to one or the other, not muddling them up, which is great fun when it comes to marking. And to flowcharts, we have a guide in the appendix, the symbols that need to be used. I should point out that if a student is using a flowchart in their exam paper, they don't have to sit there with a template or with a ruler even, right? As long as the shape, hand-drawn, shaky as it is, can be recognizable as a diamond or an ellipse or whatever, then that will do as far as we are concerned. Okay, so as long as it looks like a flowchart symbol, all right, we're going to accept it as a flowchart symbol. Okay, please do not waste time in the exam drawing meticulous flowcharts. No need. However, one point again, a little hint here is the most common failing of candidates on flowcharts is to put in an arrow head. Quite often they put in lines, and I can see their logic. They know what they're drawing. It follows from one to the other. But if they don't put the arrow head on to indicate their direction, then they're going to lose marks. And that's one of the easiest ways to lose marks. Again, I've been doing this training now for about, I don't know, I've lost track, but it's quite a few years. And again, it's very interesting to note that this problem has pretty much disappeared. And people now are very good at making sure candidates put an arrowhead on any links there are between the various decision-making boxes, etc., on a flowchart. So people are obviously getting the message. Topic 2 gets even heavier. Obviously, this is our programming. And so it's very important for the candidates to understand that they should not approach something as a linear solution. We are looking in the questions that we're asking for candidates, especially towards the end of the exam paper, to recognise the idea that they're going to have to construct small subprograms which will then lead to the final solution. Basically, they're all the basic things. There's nothing really exciting about that except the operators. Okay, so tip number 2, if you like, please make sure your candidates know the correct way to express greater than or less than, greater than and equal to, or less than and equal to. Right? It is one of the most common and frustrating mistakes that we see, especially not understanding that greater than is not quite the same thing as greater than and equal to, and less than and equal to. It is again quite good, but quite often one of the reasons a candidate might lose marks in the exam is because they have not been precise enough in their operators. So they've just casually gone something like greater than 20 when what we actually wanted was greater than or equal to 20. And they need to understand that thing there. Right. Now, in the last few minutes, I've omitted quite a few extra people who maybe have logged out or not, but just to say welcome. I will go back to a welcome and greeting later on. We're just running through materials here. And what I forgot to mention to all of you is that this is being recorded, and you will get a recording of the training session plus the slides after the thing finishes, after the session finishes. Okay, so that was a bit heavy. It gets a bit easier now. We're going to look then at the other 4 topics, which are basically, but not exclusively, paper 1 topics. So the first 2 topics we looked at there are primarily paper 2, but could crop up in some formal fashion on paper 1. The topics we're going to look at now, 3, 4, 5, and 6, are basically paper 1, but could appear potentially on paper 2 as a separate question. And the point to make here is not so much about data and binary and data representation, but actually being able to do it. It's very, very important that candidates understand that they have to be able to apply the units they're using and perhaps process them in certain ways. So they're looking at compression, for example, or storage, and they understand it. And we're, of course, working with 2 sets of units, and the candidates must be very careful not to confuse those units. Usually we will accept answers in either the standard SI units, right, or we will accept answers in the International Electrotechnical Committee, I think it's called, IEC units, where we're looking at not kilobytes but kibibytes. So make sure that the students understand there are 2 sets of measurements available. Make sure that they're careful, if necessary, if the exam paper requires them, to be able to work in the version that they are expected of. If not, as long as they say consistently 1 unit, we will accept either. And look at the question carefully. All things to do with questions and stuff like that we can deal with in the next session. To encryption. One of the unique features of this computer science, which is not in the domestic computer science exam, is the use of encryption. And there are 4 ciphers that we expect candidates to know and to apply. Very much point to apply. Now, if you are looking at this, one of the things we can tell you is a way to gain good marks quickly is to be able to do an encryption confidently. Usually these questions carry 3 or 4 marks, and if you've got it easy done, then that's it. You just do the cipher, you work it out, you apply it, whatever the question asks you to do. So it's very important to make sure they really are polished on those, because that is a way of gaining a few marks quite easily during the examination. Topic 4 is the traditional stuff. We want to know about all the elements of computer modeling and how it's done and how things are input, output, what composes all the bits of a computer, the logic that's used, what a software and programming languages are. This is very much bread and butter computer science, and I don't think there's anything of great sort of revelation there for you. I think it's very good. Candidates usually tend to do quite well on this. It's not an area of problems. And of course, there's plenty of supporting materials. So topic 4, yeah, pretty good normally. Not a problem. People seem to be able to handle that quite well. Topic 5, though, not so good. A lot of confusion sometimes about networks. They haven't learned their networks thoroughly enough. Also, and this is very, very important now, of course, we're now looking towards stuff that's coming new into the area, how things change in recent years. This specification was started writing, we started writing this about 10 years ago. And technology has moved on dramatically then, especially in the area of network security. So there is an expectation that while the spec is quite general, that candidates should be able to bring in their own personal examples relating to a question about, for example, internet security. And so they also have up-to-date knowledge of how things are changing. So it may not be there in the actual specifically word for word in the specification, but there is an understanding, whilst we wouldn't question about something that isn't in there, in the spec, we would expect a candidate to be able to add to their answer with recent examples. So do bear that in mind. You're going to have to be, and this now comes on to topic 5 has some of that in it. Topic 6, even more so. We are looking and we are looking at the way things are today in the world. So we want the most up-to-date, most recent thinking on the environmental impact of computing. We want you to think about ethical impacts and things that may have happened recently and included in that area. We want you to have an idea of what the legal requirements are and how they work. And then emerging trends. When this was written, these were possible emerging trends. Now, as far as we can see, quantum computing, artificial intelligence have definitely grown hugely, but DNA computing and nanotechnology are probably not as so obvious in people's sense. So trends are things we can't predict, obviously. But so we're looking for other trends that may be emerging now, especially in the artificial intelligence area. And again, your candidate should be capable of introducing materials from their own examples. So in other words, they can back up their argument, their discussion. They can then bring in something extra that just gives it a little bit of a wow factor. Oh, yes, that's good. Well done. Okay. First activity and first chance for you to have a bit of a break and me to have a little bit of a break. We did mention at the start, and for those who just joined us, you need to have downloaded from the Resources tab. So you click on the bottom of the screen there, Resources. You then get a sidebar come up and you need to click on the Documents bit. And the important thing you need now is the delegate booklet from the Documents tab. It's not very long. And as I mentioned to those of you who were here at the start, the answers are in it at the end. So please try to be disciplined and just look at the first few pages and not be tempted to zoom ahead and just find out what the answer is. We're not going to ask you to give your answers to us. So there's no issue here really as far as we're concerned. And we're not looking for you to feed any answers to us. We just like you to do the activity and then we'll talk through it and hopefully that will give you some idea. So what's the activity? If you go to your delegate booklet, you'll find on the opening pages activity 1, and we have got basically a series of statements. Okay, there are questions. We're not suggesting that these are necessarily exam questions, but there are questions and we would like you to try and decide from which of the 6 areas of the spec. Don't start breaking it down to anything more than that, just those 6 topic areas identified just now. Would you feel it would fit in? So although they have put in the first example, 3.331, what we're actually saying is that is topic 3. That's just topic 3. So for answer question 2, which topic is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6? Work your way down. And we're going to have a short break for me as well, so that while you're doing this, and you'll need, obviously, you might need a specification, and you can open that if you're not sure what the topics were. I'm afraid they've all scrolled up now. I will just quickly go back over them. I can leave it. Topic 1 was problem solving. Topic 2 was programming. Topic 3 is data. Topic 4 is computers. Topic 5 is communication and the internet. Topic 6 is the bigger picture. Okay, so there you have it. Start having a think. Put your answers in or write your answers down on a bit of paper, and I will talk you through it very briefly in 10 minutes time. So we're going to resume. This is a short break as well at 1:45. No, don't need 10 minutes. 22 the hour. 5 minutes I think will be enough. 22 the hour. And in the UK, that's obviously 20 to 10, but wherever you are, you can work out your own thing. Now's your chance to put any questions in chat if you want. If you have a question, put it in. I'll look at those while you're doing that task. And then in about just over 5 minutes time, we'll go back to looking at that. If you just joined us, the reason there's no sound is we're just doing activity 1, and that's in your delegate booklet. But don't worry too much if you joined us now. Just wait. In about 2 or 3 minutes' time, we'll be resuming the training. Okay, we'll move on. Whilst we've been doing that, we've actually had quite a few extra people join us. Welcome. This is being recorded, so the bits you've missed, you will be able to see when you go to the recording and catch up with it there. So don't worry about that. We're just doing activity 1 from the delegates booklet, and here is the answers. They're also in the delegates booklet on a later page. So basically, artificial intelligence is obviously topic 6. The use of IP4 over IP6 is topic 5. A binary pattern, quite interesting one that to work out. If you want to play with doing that one, it's quite a good one, I think, is topic 3. The idea of storing program assumes bit patterns are stored in memory, represented, okay, that's topic 4. And then the interesting of a bubble sort is actually topic 1. That's an interesting one. You may not have got that correct, but it is. By the way, again, this is one of the things like sorts are weirdly one of those, either it's brilliant or it's awful when it comes to answers in exams. Most, I would think probably 80% manage to fly through the sorts and do them brilliantly, so great, but another 20% is clearly haven't got a clue and don't get any marks at all. Okay, and then finally the use of variables and constants is topic 2 in a program. That's pretty obvious. We are still getting misunderstanding on defining some of the terms used in computing, like a global variable as opposed to a local variable. And we're still getting, not many, but we are still getting people who tell us a global variable is something that's applied anywhere in the world. So please do make sure that whilst they're brilliant programmers, they also do know the definition of some of the words they're using. Right, let's go to planning, because over the years I've visited quite a few countries and talked to teachers, and I know there's quite a few issues here, and it's quite important to get this first bit across. The very first bit of this is so important. The guided learning hours for this qualification is between 120 and 140. I know at this moment, probably some of you are very quickly doing mental maths, trying to work out, if you haven't already done so. A guided learning hour is one where the candidates are receiving tuition directly from a qualified teacher. It's not homework time. It's not them going off and doing some research time. It's teaching time when you are in the classroom with them Okay, they might be doing some programming and they're doing that independently and you're being asked to help them at some point, but you are available to guide them through their learning. Okay, guided learning hours. Now, immediately it's a mistake to split this in half and say if you're doing it over 2 years, that's 60 to 70 hours per year, because as I've discovered, most people do not have 2 full years. The harsh reality is that basically by about March of your second year, you need to have all the teaching done. All right. And so the important thing is, therefore, that you are thinking in terms much more of an uneven distribution, more like, all right, for example, if you're doing 120 hours, which is towards the bottom end of the range, then you're looking at possibly 70, 50, a split of 70, 50 across the 2 years. Thinking there. Now, supposing you haven't got those guided learning hours, well, you have a problem, because basically without those guided learning hours, you're really not going to be successful. And if you have been struggling and you've just done the maths now and thought, oh, whoa, hang on a minute, I'm trying to do this in 90 guided learning hours, then one of the first things you need to do is to go back to your senior management team and say, hang on a minute, how are you expecting me to be successful when you're not giving me enough time to do this? Okay, controversial, I know, but it's there. And obviously, one of the things you're going to have to work out right at the start is this is the most common reason. I used to, with another hat on, I used to go and visit UK schools where they've had problems in the exam. And almost certainly one of the first things we discover is they hadn't had enough teaching time. Okay. And again, imaginative senior management staff often say, oh, but they've got all this guy, this individual learning time and stuff like that. That's in addition. That's not guided learning. The clue is in the word. The teacher has to be present. Okay, so that's the first thought for you. I've seen a question come up. Just I think we can. Comments have come up, and I will do. Don't worry, I will answer your question shortly. Okay, but let me just deal with this first, and then I'll come back to your questions before we do the next individual piece. So if anyone's got any other questions, stick them in there, chat. I'm not ignoring you. Just I'll come back to them in a minute. Okay. Secondly, okay, paper 1 is obviously mostly theory. Paper 2 is very practical. How are you going to deliver the teaching of these? How is it going to work? And we do think it is a tricky one. We do provide you with some learning plans to help you do that. But from experience, it is going to be a slight imbalance in that you'll probably cover more paper 1 material in the first year of your course if you're doing a 2-year course, and the programming later on there is going to be more or take up much more of the second year of your course. There are a couple of reasons for this, especially if you're working with students who are on the lower age range or just at the beginning of the age range for this qualification. The mind does evolve over the 2 years, and candidates can be much better at doing abstract concepts in their second year than they were in their first year. So therefore, that's part of it. The second part of it is also discipline. You get a lot of children who are very happy to do programming, but basically just throw themselves into it. They don't sit back and think about the problem and abstract it and break it down and do all things. They just simply throw some coding down. And this is often the case with the exam when we look at the later questions in the exam, the high mark questions at the end of the exam. But it obviously depends on so many local variables as well. I mean, do you have a computer lab for all your lessons? Are you going to be able to do that? Are you going to have time to do with the modern trend? I mean, the very common trend now is what we call walking, talking mock exams. And I'll come back to them later. But they require quite a bit of time invested and so on. Obviously, the more students can practice doing the programming on real past papers, the better it will be. And so those are all factors that go together there. Okay. I'm going to change the sharing screen. I'm going to stop sharing this screen and go to the actual screen because I think it's very important. So hang on, we're just going to switch screens. I haven't gone away. I'm just trying to find the right screen. There it is. Okay, this then, hopefully this is one you're seeing. This is from the Pearson website, and it's demonstrating the various categories of information you've got for support. So please, if you haven't found this yet, I sincerely hope you have, but if you haven't, please make sure you get to this. The topics include the specification and sample assessment materials, and people often question where's the data files? The data files are there. Okay, so sample assessment materials, data files for paper 2. So that's the sample assessment materials. Next one is exam materials. It has the various papers down there over the years, and you can then open that up and you can see two things. You can see the papers there, you can see the data files, which are lower down, and more importantly, much more importantly perhaps than anything else, the examiner's reports. Please, please, if you've never done it before, read the examiner report for your exam papers, obviously alongside the exam paper, looking at it, as they will give you an insight. We spend a lot of time, my team of markers will basically sit down and make all sorts of comments on what they discovered when they've been marking the papers. They then collate that into one for me. I then pass that to the chief examiner. They collate all the comments, and so therefore it's full of a lot of wisdom that's accumulated from the exam. So if you've not looked at examiners' reports before, please give them a look over. They're so important. In here as well are the forms for admin, the resources booklet, which goes out to every candidate. So if you're wondering what every candidate has, it has the sudo command set in, and that's there. You can get a copy of that. And there is this one, right? Instructions for the conduct of the examination. Now, this can change from year to year. Please do not presume just because you did it this year that it's going to be exactly the same next year. Make sure you're always working from the relevant one. Obviously, at the moment, we haven't got one for the June 2025 exams. But looking at this one, it tells you how you should be doing the exam, how it should be administered, and practical things that need to be able to be done, which we'll come back to in a minute. And then also on here, you've got teaching and learning materials. So there's, from the early days, we have exemplar materials, and we will be looking at some of those later. We have possible lesson plans, we have mapping documents, and we have, embarrassingly, right, there are some of my training events there from previous sessions that have been done. All right, so you can look at those as well, and they're useful to look at as well. And that's, there's a load of stuff there. So I sometimes wonder if people have found that or not. So I would like to just sort of show you the web page anyway, make sure you know what you're looking at, and then you can find out all the stuff from there. Right, we need to stop sharing that. And we need to share that one. And you can see that the screen and the PowerPoint slides show the similar screen and all the rest of it. Right, before we get to there, I have some questions. So let me answer those. Where are you going? So here we go. First question, is there any flexibility with the pseudocode terms, i.e. as long as it makes logical sense, students will gain marks? All right, yes, basically, we understand this, and so if there is a pseudocode document, so the expectation is they would have checked and so on, but we do understand that sometimes, all right, they have to, but basically we would expect them to have some sort of consistency. So I think it should be really that they do learn the pseudocode that we provide, but we are understanding that if the intent is there, we wouldn't normally penalize them as a consequence. But it could make a difference if they obviously get things muddled up. Okay, the percentage of pseudocode to Python is basically, it's almost entirely programming. Pseudocode features very limitedly all right, in the paper 2. You can go and have a look at the papers. You'll see that usually, and again, I can't tell you, there's no definites about this, obviously, but so far, pseudocode is what we provide you. We give you some pseudocode in the question, and you have to convert it into some sort of programming. Or last summer, there was a case of flow diagrams converted and stuff like that. So it would usually be that way round. We certainly wouldn't ask you to do the reverse. We wouldn't give you some programming. And well, no, I can't say that because it's possible. I don't see the paper, so I don't know. But that's how things are going all at the moment. Okay, so pseudocode is a small, very small part of the paper. Do not spend a lot of time on it. I think those are the questions that have been asked. So we're there. Yeah, any other things? Now's your chance quickly if you want to put something in chat. We can do it. Hopefully that answers your question. If you could let me know I did answer your question, that will be useful as well. So I'd like to feel we have actually got it right for you. Right. Right. Okay. Second activity, another little break for you, and that is we're going to analyze content and decide in which order they might be delivered. So we're looking at teaching order. This is activity 2 in your delegate booklet. Activity 2 in the delegate booklet. There is no right answer to this, but I'm going to take you through our answer and our thinking about it. You might want to, and usually, hopefully, a few brave people do put something up that they have other thoughts, and that will be useful to share with everyone to give them some idea of how it's going. So go to activity 2 in your delegate booklet. If anyone's having trouble with that, please let us know through chat. And then I'm going to give you 10 minutes this time till 10:05, all right, to think about how you would deliver that and your reasoning. So please be ready to justify your reasoning for the order in which you put them in. Okay, again, the answer is actually, sorry, our answer is in the booklet, but try not to look at that just yet. I'll leave you with that. We will resume at 5:05. 5:05. Thank you, Nida. We're going to start in about 1 minute's time. So, and I've seen the comments about on there. So I will answer those in a minute. Give you just another minute. We're required to do this so you have at least taken a break from looking at the screen, hopefully. Okay, folks, I think we're there. Just to clarify, the reason we have these activities is obviously to give you a chance to be engaged, and you'll certainly have loads of activities on Wednesday to do. The whole thing is basically an activity. But the second point is that and I keep getting to mention it, you should, of course, we meant to tell you to step away from the screen for a few minutes for health and safety reasons. And the third reason is for me. I have a break, which I like. Anyway, now this thing about calculations. And are we going to use IEC or SI units? At the moment, because both are in the specification, candidates are free to use one or the other to demonstrate their calculations. And as someone has correctly pointed out, we do not normally ask you to do the calculation. We ask you to demonstrate how you would do the calculations. That's quite important, in fact. Although someone says, well, are they allowed calculators? And I'm always amused by that thought because they're sitting in front of a blooming great big calculator for paper 2. So on paper 1, we would never, basically want you to get involved in any complex calculation. If it's an obviously simple one that anyone could do in their head, then it might be there. But basically, calculations are going to be demonstrated rather than actually done. I hope that makes enough sense. And we would expect candidates to say consistently within the units they've chosen. So they would be consistent in SI units or they'd be consistent in IE units. Okay, that's the important bit. However, the question might actually specify one or other of the units, and in which case they will be expected to work in one or the other. I would suspect, and no quoting me on this, but I would suspect in the next version of the specification, we will move over to IE units exclusively, IEC units. But at the moment, either's possible. So therefore, that's the answer to that chat question there, hopefully. Right, the order of the specification points. You've got it actually also in your booklet. This is the order that we think, i.e. the senior examining team think, would be an appropriate approach, but it doesn't necessarily mean you would do it the same way. And certainly if you come up with a different version, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Now, one of the things you might notice from this question, all right, is how a machine works, or how a computing machine works. Notice that we're drawing from two different parts of the specification. We're dealing from Unit 4 and Unit 3, all right, and they are intermixed. So it demonstrates also how sometimes having a thematic approach can cross topic boundaries. Our thinking was, though, you have to start from theory. So the first thing we want to start is the very last item on here, which is the input process output model, all right, which is a common question in paper 1. And we just want that model. We just want to look at the theory of it. So we move from theory to application. Second item we're going to deal with is the third item down. So the second thing we do is the third item in the list there. And that is look at the hardware components of a computer system. So again, all very much knowledge being put together at this stage here. Right, and then we move slightly from that. The third item we would go for is the third from the bottom. Understand the function of different types of memory, and therefore please understand that we Sorry, please understand that we said understand there. So in other words, it's going to be a little bit more than just knowledge. No, this is what it is, but why are they different? What's the reason that RAM is different to ROM, and so on? Then we would have moved on to the first item, understand the concept. So we're moving from knowledge to understanding, which is fairly similar, to do with the other bits and pieces of a computer. Then we move on to the actual software side of things, if you like, that computers use binary to represent numbers. That's the fifth topic we would go to, which is also 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth one on the screen. And then we start to move on how we actually do something with that. So topic 6 is manipulation of numbers and what we're going to do and so on. So that will be coming now. We're getting from knowledge, we're moving through understanding to application. And then 7, convert between binary and denary whole numbers. And so pretty straightforward, but yes, but there again, it's more of a doing thing. And 8, we are now getting into clear analysis in the sense that we are starting to look at truth tables for given logic tables. By the way, candidates generally tend to do truth tables quite well in the exam. Again, it's one of those very much polarizing questions. Truth tables tend to either be done very well or very badly. And then we go on to 9. We're going to look at how to produce logic statements for a given problem, and 10, how we might encode all that into a computer. So it moves now to very much application of knowledge and a small amount of analysis. So, okay, give me 2 seconds, please. My morning coffee has arrived. Thank you. Sorry, I should have mentioned we all work from home these days, and so we're in a domestic situation here. But I need my morning coffee at this point. It might be your afternoon coffee, of course, where you are. So, okay, hopefully that was okay. Again, the answer's there if you want to check it, so it's fine. And no doubt, this is probably what you're most waiting for. And let's get into the nitty-gritties of the 2 papers and how we're doing things and all the rest of it. Paper 1 is very traditional. It has 2 hours. Everyone sits at the same time. There's 80 marks. It's written answers, and every question is included. All right. We have a variety of question types. We might have multi-choice, a short open response. That's usually a 1 or 2 mark question. We'll look at those on Wednesday. Open response and extended open response, which are usually 4 marks or more. All the nature of the questions, all that side of things is part of Wednesday's session. Today is more about the practicalities of it. So the candidates sit it. When they have finished and you then parcel it off, you send it off usually to Hellaby in Yorkshire, where we have a bank of scanning machines that scan your candidate's paper and then split it up. So in other words, a marker does not see a candidate's whole paper. We divide up the paper, and so the computer marks the multiple choice. Generally, graduates, it's always on paper. Yes, sorry, question. Paper 1 is always on paper. We scan it, and then we separate it out. So the multiple choice questions go to be computer marked. The short open response questions are usually marked by clerical people because they've got very definite answers, right? They have very specific answers, so it's easy to mark. And everything else is marked by an expert marker, someone like myself, a computer science teacher. It has been our hope, by the way, going slight digression, that that people overseas could mark the paper as well, because it's all done online these days, the training and everything. So you don't have to be in the UK to get the training to do the marking. But we haven't really been able to put it into practice yet. But it's something we were trying to do for the future. A couple of points with this. Multiple choice. They've changed their mind. What do they do? Well, the important thing to do is try and be as clear-cut. The exam paper gives you instructions as to what to do if you change your mind and you want to choose a different answer. What it doesn't give you instruction to do is if you've changed your mind, you've given a different answer, then you've had a rethink and you want to change your mind back. All right. If it gets to there's more than one change taking place, there's nothing wrong in writing alongside your multiple choice answer the option I want is, the choice I want is. Just write it in alongside. All right. So it's clear cut, absolutely clear cut which one they want. The computer will detect that there's other stuff there and it will chuck it out to a human to mark and look at and so on. So it'd be much better that way done. Even better though, don't put your answer down for multiple choice straight away. Do give some time to think about it, and maybe just note down what you think you're going to answer and then come back to it. But just don't forget to come back. Okay, that's that. There's nothing more complicated about that. That's straightforward. It's this beastie that's going to give us a lot to talk about. Okay, this is a 3-hour paper. There is a 3-day window and there's 80 marks and all questions are there. Within that, there's still multiple choice as before, and there is some short open response questions, but basically most of it is programming. Not all of it, but most of it is programming of some form or other. Either taking program code and amending it, correcting it, and then later on in the paper, writing it. The paper is ramped in the sense that the questions get more difficult as the paper progresses. And sorry, I should say about paper 1. Paper 1 is the same as well. Paper 1 is ramped so that the question 1, all right, will address probably grades 1 to 6, 1 to 7, but question 5, or the last question on the paper, will address grades 3 to 9. Okay, so they are ramped in difficulty, both papers. Now, you've got a 3-day window, but I should point out that really, you want to be thinking in terms of the first day and second day as the way you're going to do it. And day 3 is an emergency. If things go wrong, right, it's important that you have that spare space. If you've had a power cut, if you've had problems with the computers and so on. How do you set it up? It is obviously up to you to decide how you're going to divide your cohort. They don't all have to sit it simultaneously, all right? But it's also important that there's no overlap between candidates that that don't be able to inform each other what's on the paper. So that's a practical issue you might do. So it may have to be a sort of successive thing. We don't care what time of the day you do it. And we've had past people saying, can we do this at 5 o'clock in the morning? If that's the coolest part of the day and the time of day when you're most likely to be guaranteed your power supplies, then by all means do it then. It doesn't have to be during the normal school day if that's the situation. It can be any time you like, as long as you've got 3 hours. Okay. If things go wrong on a big scale, like as a power cut and things, then obviously you need to contact Pearson, and they will try to be as understanding and supportive as they can in telling you how to resolve the problem. All right, that's up to you. In the exam room, it should be ideally, and I'll just accept the fact we have to say ideally, that the candidate cannot see another candidate's computer without making a big effort. In other words, if they can turn around, obviously you can't stop them doing that. And if they can turn around and see the computer of the person on the other aisle to them, well, that's a bit extreme. We don't expect you to cope with that. But they shouldn't be able to just glance across at another computer and see something. So either some sort of screening or spacing them further apart. Whatever works for you, basically, is up to you. It's fine. However, I have to deal with the issue of malpractice. Every year, we do get a few candidates who have quite clearly looked at another candidate's screen and have copied it down. The giveaway is not in what they got right, but in what they've got wrong. Okay, so where it has happened and one candidate has tried to take advantage of another student's work, it's pretty obvious usually which way round it is, but it does happen, and we are trying to, and we can spot it quite easily, to be honest, because whilst paper 1 is marked by all sorts of people and different bits, paper 2 is marked by one examiner. Okay, so they are very much aware of what's going on. Anyway, we won't worry too much about that. So endeavor to do your best. No one's asking you, this perfection is not possible. Just the best you can do in the circumstances you have got. All right. Allow for the fact that there may be problems with the computers technically. So one of the invigilators for the exam ought to be, but must not only be, a computer science teacher. All right. So you or your colleague should be on hand. And so when a student says, I run into a problem, they can decide whether that problem is something to do with the computers and there needs to be some action taken, perhaps moving them to another computer or something like that, or that problem is just because they haven't got the knowledge, understanding, or ability to do the question, in which case they just have to get on with it as best they can. Right. What about the actual getting the whole thing organized? Before the exam is sat, you will be sent the data files. These data files need to be placed in a folder for each student. Can we recommend that they have 2 copies? They have the data files and another folder called backup data files. As once they start working on the data file, they don't know what the original was like, and if things go wrong, maybe they'll think, like, I want to start again, I want to try and do this again. So they could go back to the backup data file and start again from the beginning, if that's the case. It's quite useful. All right. The data files then are distributed obviously online to the students. Now, there should be no internet access during this part of the examination. And I understand, I see a comment already has come up, that the candidates have got a problem here. And especially if you're using Chromebooks, which require some sort of internet link and stuff like that. You need to talk to Pearson specifically about your situation. So if you cannot do the exam without being connected to the internet, you need to go straight to Pearson and talk to them. And at the end of this presentation, there will be a link to the person you need to contact and ask for help. Okay, they themselves may not know the answer, but they certainly know someone who will. Okay, but effectively the regulations stand at the moment. There should be no internet access during the exam. Okay, that's the regulations. Candidates, having done the task, need to save it as the task name. And this is where we're now giving a huge appeal. Please keep file structures simple. We have, I exaggerate not, sometimes have to click through 4, 5, 6, or even 7 or 8 levels to get to the candidate's work, right? So the first one might be center number, then you click through that and you find you've got the candidates listed, so you click through that, and then you see you've got the original files and you click through that, and then you find you've got sort of a repeat of what you've just seen, so you click through that, and finally, after a lot of clicking through, you arrive at task 1B or whatever it might be that's required. So keep the file structure simple, please. And also, and this is again one thing we're begging you to do, basically, what you want to be doing is putting their answers, the candidates' answers. We don't need to see the original data files. We just need to see the candidates' answers. They can be placed into one folder with the center number, candidate name. So center number, candidate name, single folder, which is then zipped and then uploaded to secure file transfer. If you've not done the exam before, secure file transfer is how you send us the electronic version of your work, okay, the files. And your exams officer will have all the training in that and so on, so you don't have to understand how that works or anything, all right? Yeah, sorry, someone's asking for repeat. The work, when the candidate's finished by the candidate, needs transferring into a folder which is entitled center name, so center number, candidate name. Center number, candidate name. All right, it's in the ICE document. You then zip that work and upload it to Learner Work Transfer. Notice that you can't add stuff to Learner Work Transfer. It's a single upload. So you have just one chance to upload the work. Well, not one chance, but you do it all in one go. If you have any problems, you'll have to actually request access to your work, which you have to download back to the center and then re-upload a second time. Sorry, apologies. So it's not that you don't get a second chance, it's just that if something has gone wrong, you're going to have to request reopening the Learner Work Transfer. As you might guess, this is for security reasons. So at the end of the exam window, you're uploading the marks. This year, that was done remarkably quickly by everyone. It was wonderful, really brilliant. It means we can get on with the marking before we've actually got the written paper part from it. The paper part of it, of course, you're still going to send off at the moment this year. Hang on, it's called Learner Work Transfer or LWT. All right, but if you're a marker, it's called LWA, just to confuse everybody. Did I use LWA? Sorry. Our version of it is called Learner Work Assessment. It's the same as yours, but just basically the other end of the process where we take stuff down. Your end is called Learner Work Transfer. So it's there. Okay. Hopefully that's clear. Yeah. So yeah, I followed that bit there. Yeah, the paper part at the moment. Now this might change, but at the moment it is still. So all I can say is that for this year it was that paper is sent off to the Hellaby. It's scanned the same as paper one, but on this occasion, all the paper, the whole paper, goes to one examiner to look at and mark. They just get the whole paper. So what the examiners were doing this summer was basically within a few days of standardization of the exam, they were able to get on with marking the coding part of it while they were waiting for the exam papers to arrive and be scanned and sent into there. They are then loaded up into Learner Work Transfer, what we call Learner Work Assessment, the same as anything else. So now that's the situation this year. I do know that there's thoughts to slightly change things next year, but basically at the moment, nothing is different. But you may, when you get to the exam next year, you may find slightly different instructions. Okay. I think that covers most of the features of paper 2 I can think of. Any other questions on it? We'll deal with all the assessment of the work and so on. You can use any IDE you wish. Questions come up. We do not mind any valid IDEs work there. We as examiners marking, a lot of us, and this is no recommendation, please don't feel that, but as examiners, a lot of us like using Thonny, just to let you know that. But any IDE will work. You don't have to use a particular one. And you don't have to use an IDE at all. If you really want to be masochistic, you can just do it in Word. I've only seen it done once, but you could, theoretically. Yeah, and the other question that's been asked is this 3-day window. Yeah, the point is you've got 3 days, but if you, for example, run into a problem, you want to save that 3rd day for any problems, because what we can't do very easily is grant you extra time. Right? You've already been given a 3-day window. It's no good deciding I'm going to do all my work on the last day of that window, all my examining on the last day of the window, and then find that you've had a power cut or something, and then got to go back to Pearson's. And it's not impossible, but you're going to be delayed while you're waiting for a decision about how you carry on with the work and all the rest of it. So therefore, it's much better to make sure you use the first 2 days of the window and so on. Uh, it, right, here we go again. Window. What about VS Code? Is that allowed? I'm trying to think in what context you're thinking. No, I think is the answer, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm just thinking. Leave that with me. I'm going to ponder that and thinking about what you're trying to. If you want to expand slightly on your question, that would be helpful, please, Mohammed. Uh, uh, exactly what are you thinking about there, please? As I may be thinking about the wrong thing to you. Okay, and we'll come back to that before the end. Okay, instead of, yeah, I mean, well, it's just another way of coding it, isn't it? As long as it is some some coding systems give you much more help, as you may have discovered, and that we don't mind about that because it doesn't really affect the marks, to be honest, hugely. But yeah, so if it's just in terms of coding it, yeah, fine, that should be no problem. The reason are you using Chromebook? Yeah, I appreciate that this has come up in the last couple of years. If you're using Chromebook, please will you talk to either the name person at the end of this paper presentation, or will you please talk to your regional advisor about how you're going to manage the exam, and that might limit which Python coding system you can use anyway. Can't see any more questions coming about that, so I'll wait. Yeah, okay. As you know, there are three programming languages, and we just ask you to stick with one of them. A good 95% of papers now are Python, and 5% are about C# or Java. Okay. Oh, they have a pseudocode reference document, although that's the one they had from the paper one. Oh, while I think of it, please don't send the pseudocode documents, the reference documents. The scanners at Hellaby, they're told instructor they must scan everything that the centre sends. They're not allowed to be judgmental in any way whatsoever. They must just scan the entire paper, everything that arrives from your centre. So this means that quite often after the first page, we have several pages of the pseudocode booklets, which we don't need. So please don't send them back to us. It will save you on postage as well. Only send the written paper. Only send the written paper. Right. Question asked, will it be updated? Yeah, it's a good question. Things were thrown into chaos by COVID. So we're probably going to be a bit longer. Usually these things have about a 10-year cycle. But because we didn't have a couple of years of exams because of COVID, that may extend the cycle. At the moment, there's nothing in the wings. The only thing happening at the moment is we're working on an A-level computer science, and that is in development at the moment. But when that becomes available, certainly not this year. But I think that's our priority at the moment. And then we'll probably return to the computer science in a few years' time. But you usually expect about 10 years out of a qualification and a specification. Yeah. Okay, last break, brief one, right? Here are some questions. I want to know, are they on paper one or paper two? If you want to be really clever, which part of the specification do they come from? Okay, please note there are 2 pages of this. We don't know what happened when it was originally devised, but it actually seems to appear to end on the first page. But if you turn over the page, you'll find there's some more. So another little activity for you to do, and we will resume at about 22. 22 gives you just about 5 minutes to have a look at identifying. So it's in your delegate booklet. Okay, and short break, restart in 5 minutes time. Okay, hopefully you worked through that, had a little bit of a break as well. Here's our version of it. An array, paper 1 type question, using a compiler of an interpreter. Okay, paper 1 type question again, but explain why programmers use constants in their code is more typical of paper 2. Internet protocols, paper 1, a for loop as paper 2, and an ASCII table, paper 1, DNA computing, paper 1, write a subgroup. Pretty obvious stuff. I'm not going to dwell on it. The answers are there in the booklet anyway as well. So, okay, preparing students for exams. I'm sure you're all professionals. I'm not really probably telling you anything new here, but we should point out that there are all sorts of things you can do. Programming, we don't necessarily say, here's a problem, write a program. We might, for example, say, here's some programming with errors in it, correct them. It'll be a typical opening question we might get. We might ask you to do a very simple problem, which only requires a few lines of code. One thing I can say is that, strangely, the coding has got shorter as the years have gone by. We're obviously seeing much better coding by students now. Most students now understand the need for efficiency in their coding, and they do a very good job on that. Just while I think of it, a question came up: should you teach 2 programming languages to your students? No, please don't. Stick to 1 programming language. They're remarkably good at getting completely confused otherwise, and they might answer one question in Python and then start answering the next question in C# or something. So don't do that. Just make sure they have 1 programming language, and I'd keep quiet about anything else. Just let them learn Python if that's your favorite. If you like C# or Java, we'll just stick to that, and don't confuse the issue. All right, so that's pretty straightforward, but it is interesting. It's becoming much more problem solving rather than coding. If you go back and look at the very first paper, as we will do actually on Wednesday, a very first example of the highest level question, it was an awful lot of coding, and now it's a lot less. Okay. So they might correct errors in the code. They might predict, do protect, run, investigate, modify, make. In other words, they have a bit of code, they modify it, they run it, they and check it. All right, you can get them to work together in preparation. So paired programming works quite well. Faded work examples where the guidance and support disappears as the code goes on. Pearson and Parsons problems, which is a wonderful thing for them to do, but an absolute nightmare to mark. This is where they have all the code, but it's not in the right order. They have to rearrange blocks of code into the logical order to work the exam, and that is such fun to mark. Okay. You should practice with both papers. A very popular thing that started developing, you may have heard of it, is walking, talking mocks. These are basically where they sit as if they're in the exam for either paper 1 or paper 2. All right, and you take each question in turn. You talk it through with the students. They then write or code their answers, depending on which paper it is, and then you move on to the next question. Work it through with them, they write or code it, and the time allocated for the actual tasks they're doing will equal the time in the exam. So obviously the whole thing will take more than the 2 or 3 hours of the paper, but the timing is only whilst they're actually doing their answers. And a lot of teachers have reported that this has been a very good way of doing an initial mock. We haven't got any ability to deal with hand, so Theda, if you want to put your question in the, is it Theda Win? If you want to put your question in chat, please, I will pick it up. If I've missed it, I do apologise. Just stick it back in chat a second time. It might be because I've moved on. So using Zoom for this training is a new adventure this year. We're still getting the hang of it, and we haven't solved some of the problems that we've encountered. Anyway, walking, talking, mocks, exams are really good, and make sure that they're, yeah, I think everything else I've mentioned on there is now pretty well there, because I just want to spend the last few minutes looking at what else is important. And this is very important. Okay, here are the various possibilities. I'll leave that with you. If you're going to look at the PowerPoint presentation, you can find out where things might come from. You have two subject advisors. You have your regional subject advisor in your own country or area, who hopefully you know of. And we have a subject advisor here in the UK, which is Tim Brady, and I've got his details for you in a minute. Okay, I've just got a new. The coding shortcut commands, yes. Yes, no problem. And they can use anything that's in the language library as well. So that's fine. Yeah, the advisor is coming now. He's coming at the end of this presentation. Okay. But this is where I want to take to Results Plus, because this is a free service. Once they've done the exam, and interesting enough, you can also request this, but as a paid service. The Results Plus is fine for those who sat the real exam, but you can also do this by actually taking a mock paper and paying Pearson's to basically provide you with the breakdown of it. So in two ways, but the Results Plus breaks down every single topic and question. Everyone is individually marked, and you can then look at that performance between students, between teachers, between schools, between other centres of a similar characteristic to you. So you might say, how am I doing in relation to other rural comprehensive schools of, say, 500 pupils in my country? Am I doing? And whilst the results will be anonymized for the other schools, they will indicate how you're doing. You will also be able to look at how your students are doing on per question. So obviously, once they've sat the exam, this service is available to analyze the results, right? Some strange symbols are appearing on the screen. I don't know how that's happening. All right. Don't worry too much about that. Anyway, to get in Results Plus, there's a link at the bottom there, and it tells you how to do it, right? And you can also feed in your mock exam results. So if you'd use a past, you have to use a past paper, and you can't hybrid it. You have to use the whole paper as is. Okay, but if you use a whole paper as is, you mark it, but you can then send the marks in, and the analysis will be done on the marks you send in. So that's an important thing where you can do that. Okay, right, moving on. So formally, the student will take the exam on the paper. The papers are scanned. There's a view of our scanning machines. Examiners mark the papers and then reports performance rules. The performance reports are very comprehensive. They have a red, yellow, green light system, highlighting in red where significant problems are, green where things went well. But we also have, right, Exam Wizard, and this allows you to make up your own exam paper, all right, but using existing marking. So in other words, you can now have a hybrid paper, all right, and you know, maybe you only want to cover particular parts of the specification in your question. Okay, so you can have a hybrid paper, and you can then use the existing mark scheme, so your marking is accurate, and you can then carry on. So now this helps you produce customized exam papers. However, they can't be used with Results Plus. Okay, now computer science is slightly different to all other subjects. Okay, you can access the scripts, script 1, through the Access to Script portal. So after the exam, and once they've been marked, you can look at your candidate script and see exactly where the marks were awarded and what the candidate actually wrote. Okay, so they're able from results day. And you can obviously look at them and think about it. So that's extremely handy, because sometimes you can think, well, they didn't do very well, but why didn't they do very well on that question? And then when you go and look at what they actually wrote, you can see why things have gone wrong. But this is paper 1. Now for paper 2, it's slightly different. For the written parts, the same thing applies, but for the coding part, the electronic part, you already have the evidence in your centre. I should point out, never ever delete the candidate's work until at least a year after the exam has been sat, because there's all sorts of reasons you may need to go back to it. All right, so you can obviously see the candidate's work, but what you can request from Access as scripts for paper 2 is the mark breakdown. So it's not quite as integrated as paper 1, where you see the paper with the marks on. This is where you get a breakdown of your candidate's marks, but you then have to apply them yourself to the coding pages. But again, very valuable in analysing how things are gone. Oh, right, a question. Are they penalised on legible handwriting? No. Absolutely not. Most of us who are examiners now for many years have become very adept at reading virtually anything. But if we can't, we have to give it to the chief examiner. And the chief examiner has to decide what's been written. And if they can't read it, they're going to come back to you lot and ask for a typescript version of the script. So we always do it. And to be honest, we're pretty good at it now. And on Wednesday, you're going to see a hilarious example of not handwriting, but you'll see when we get to it, of writing a calculation and how you work it out. Okay, that's there. We also have the student books with active book. That's paid, and that's a different department to me, so I can't dwell on that. There is a textbook. It's International GCSE Computer Science. There's no reason at all why you shouldn't use any other computer science. This is not the only one. There are other textbooks available. Please make use of them. And you may be interested, what a lot of people have found really helpful is to join the UK GCSE Computer Science group on Facebook. Okay, if you go onto Facebook and Google GCSE Pearson Computer Science, you'll find there's a group of them. Now, it is the domestic one, so make allowances for the fact that they will be slightly different. But the important thing is that the teachers on there are publishing a whole wealth of resources, some of which is free, some of which is charged for. And you can get sort of, colleagues' opinion on them and stuff like that. There's an awful lot there on that Facebook site. So have a look at that if you haven't got to it before. Right. This is your contact, Tim. Please notice, though, that the best way to contact him is the email teachingcomputerscience@pearson.com. Tim also does ICT, so if you have an ICT question, if you're doing the ICT qualification, then same guy, teachingict@pearson.com. Okay, he's the person to contact. Now, Tim won't know the answer, but he is a sort of gatekeeper who will then be able to direct your inquiries to someone that does. So there's no point really in trying to ring him, because he's not going to give you an answer over the phone. But if you email him, then he will forward that email to an appropriate person, and they will get back to you. So that's the way to go forward. He is your okay. If they don't get a reply on teachingcomputerscience@pearson.com, send him another one on teachingict@pearson.com. That will annoy him, and that will hopefully get an answer. Sorry, Tim's a lovely guy. I've worked with him a long time. The Facebook group is I'm not sure exactly, but if you Google, on Facebook, if you search not iGCSE, but GCSE Computer Science and Edexcel. Oh, Edexcel it is. I think it's Edexcel, not Pearson. So Edexcel, GCSE Computer Science, you should find the group. I think they've now twigged that they've got iGCSE people coming in, because they're a bit puzzled at one point because it's a slightly different exam. But they're a really great bunch of people, and I follow them to make sure that the advice they're giving is good, and it's always good advice that's going out there. Okay, we finish with questions. Basically, we have 5 minutes. We will be cut off at the top of the hour. So if you have any other questions, please put them into the chat now. This is your chance to recap. At the end of this session, you will be sent by email a recording link and the PowerPoint slides. This can take 2 to 3 days to come through. Right? Come to access student. Yeah, well, you got it in your centre. After the practical exam, once they've sat the practical exam and the results have been published, by all means, look at the student code. Yes. It's in your centre. It's there. So on. I mean, make use of it. But what you want then, of course, is the mark breakdown from us against the code. Okay, so this is being recorded, and that will come to you 2 or 3 days' time. I gather certification also comes the same way. If there's any problems or any of this, and you're back on Wednesday, then just ask me on Wednesday when you're back for part 2. On Wednesday, part 2, we are going to be doing a lot from the sample questions booklet that is in today's download. Now, it's a very big booklet. It lasts for, I don't know, about 30 pages or so. But if you're the type of person who likes to scribble notes and things, you might want to print it off. You may find it very useful to print off the sample questions, not the delegate booklet, but the sample questions booklet. Print it off for use on Thursday, and then you can just write all over that as we're talking it through, because we're going to do an awful lot. This was the relaxed, easygoing session. Wednesdays is intense and very, very tight on time. Try and get it all in. A lot to be done. So be warned about that. Anyway, hope you'll be back with us on Wednesday. I will stay here watching the chat for the next few minutes. Otherwise, please do feel free to go. All right, and see you Wednesday, hopefully.